Good afternoon, everybody. Today, we are going to discuss the latest updates in the world of immigration to Canada, and we will also talk about some of the topics based on the communications that I received this week and some of the developments that we had in our business. So, initially, I will focus on the latest updates in the world of immigration to Canada on some of the platforms that you are right now watching me, like on YouTube. You can actually post your questions. If I see your questions here, I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. So, without further ado, let's focus on the news. Okay, let me switch over to the news page. So the first one is something to be proud of as a Canadian. Canada actually has shown to be a leader in terms of refugee resettlement to the country. So keep that in mind that you can become a refugee in Canada in two different ways. One way is that you leave your own country or the place that you reside and you go to another country and then you present yourself usually to UNHCR, which is the refugee agency for the United Nations. You file for refugee status. If they accept you, then they present your case to different countries, and one of those countries will pick you, and then eventually they will resettle you to their country. So Canada has shown to be the champion of resettlement in the past 3 years. In fact, if I look at the numbers, so for example, in 2023, 2021, Canada welcomed 20,400 refugees, which is an interesting number because Canada allowed many people to be resettled to Canada, and we were actually number one country on the list in terms of resettlement. However, resettlement is not the only way that you can become a refugee in Canada. Your alternative is that somehow travel to Canada and file for refugee status either at the port of entry or later after entering Canada, you may file for refugee status in Canada. Whichever happens, you have to go through a process of hearing, and the refugee protection division of Immigration Refugee Board of Canada decides your fate whether to give you protection or not. But when you are resettled, the way it works is that they will interview you while you're outside Canada, and sometimes you are directly being sponsored by the government of Canada. Sometimes you are sponsored by private entities, but eventually you will be resettled to Canada. And by the time that you reach Canada, you enter Canada as a permanent resident. If you are not familiar with these concepts, if you read this article that we have posted, is the news article by our journalist Andrea. You can actually read more about this, and she has given link to many other articles about refugee resettlement, filing for refugee status in Canada, etc. I also post this here on the chat box. You may be able to see it. If you are watching my video after recording, I will post a link below this video as well. So the next piece of news that I would like to be sharing with you is about the community that is helping the international entrepreneurs the most. So the local government district of Pinawa partnered with the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, MPNP, to jointly attract and assess international entrepreneurs to start their business in Pinawa. The initiative is the first of this kind of partnership between MPNP. MPNP stands for Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program. And by the way, for those of you who don't know about Manitoba, Manitoba is a province in Canada. It's actually in the heart of Canada. It's the exact middle province in Canada. It is located between the provinces of Ontario on the east side of Manitoba and the province of Saskatchewan on the west side of Manitoba. And this province, the largest city and the center for Manitoba is Winnipeg. So Pinawa has managed to build a relationship with MPNP for the purpose of provincial nominee program, especially for entrepreneurs. If you want to know more, again, I will post the link here on the chat box. And then also, oh, if you are interested, you can also, after recording this video, I will post the link below this video as well on YouTube. Okay, so that's another one. The other news is that IRCC is trying to use artificial intelligence and also electronic tools to somehow enhance the way that they process their application. Right now, IRCC is facing about 2.6 million backlogs under different programs. So, about probably 500,000 of them are people who are applying for citizenship in Canada. We have many others that they have applied for permanent resident status in Canada and much more under temporary resident applications like temporary resident visa, study permit, and work permit applications. So that's how it works. And to the way that we see it right now is that IRCC is trying to reduce those backlogs desperately. And one of the tools that they are using is artificial intelligence, like programs such as Chinook, that will process or pre process applications and then they give them to the officers. So the officers spend less time in reviewing the documents and processing the applications. Having said that, of course, those tools are not perfect. In some regions, when they have used those tools, it has increased the number of refusals. In some areas, it has increased the number of approvals. So it's something that is being used, and it's like a double sword. And even for temporary resident visa, you have two options: a regular MyGCIC application process. The other option is to use the TRV portal. And when you use the TRV or temporary resident visa portal, it is guaranteed that artificial intelligence will process your application. So you need to know about this. The advanced data analytics on visitor record applications. That is a new development that they are trying to quickly process visitor record applications. If you're not familiar with visitor record applications, when you are inside Canada, sometimes you want to extend your stay here in Canada as a visitor. So you already entered as a tourist, and then you decide that you want to extend your stay in Canada. You apply for a visitor record. Sometimes it's not about being a tourist. Sometimes you're a worker or a student, but you want to change your status from worker or a student to a simple visitor. In those situations, you apply for a visitor record from inside Canada, and the processing time right now is crazy. It's roughly about 6 months. And what IRCC is trying to do by using this advanced automated technology, they want to expedite the processing of those kinds of applications. At the end of the day, the officers are the ultimate decision makers on each application. The role of the analytics system is to give them information about the merits of the application and let the officer decide. Having said that, obviously, the way that the system analyzes the application could affect the way that IRCC looks at those documents. Okay, so before I move forward, so I see here some messages. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. So if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat box. If I see them, unfortunately, on some of the platforms, I don't see your messages. But if you are on YouTube, it is guaranteed that I will see your messages. Ask your questions, and then when I'm done with the presentation, I will get back to you and answer those questions. Okay, the next piece of news. So this is something that has been going on for a few years, since 2015. A group of people have created an organization, and they are trying to convince these four countries, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and if I'm not mistaken, Australia. They work together and somehow create a free movement between the citizens. So right now, if I want as a Canadian travel to any of those countries, Australia, New Zealand, or United Kingdom, I can easily travel to those countries. Now, in some areas, I need an ESTA, but that's an all-night application and is a 5-minute application in most cases. So it's very easy to travel to those countries. But if I want to work in those countries or study in those countries, I need to apply for a study permit or a work permit like anybody else. Albeit, obviously, because of the closeness of the relationship between these four countries, it is very likely that my application will be approved. But at the end of the day, it's an application and it could be refused. This group says that these four countries, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and New Zealand, they are very close politically, culturally, and for that reason, it's a good idea if we have is this free movement between these four countries. They call this approach Kanzuk, and they have run many seminars. They have run many advocacy sessions with the leaders of these groups. Some of those leaders actually have shown interest in the process. It's something is in making. I'm not sure whether this will happen or not, and if it happens, when it will happen, how it will happen. But it's an interesting concept. You may take a look at this, and if you are especially a citizen of any of those countries, this could affect your future in terms of working and studying in Canada and even becoming a permanent resident of Canada. Some of you are probably aware that in Iran, uh, there is a huge unrest, and as many call it, it's a revolution against the current government because of the repression of women, human rights, and of course, many other reasons on top of that. And of course, there has been many advocacy going on outside Canada by Iranians to encourage the governments of different countries to impose sanctions against the police in Iran and some of the rulers of Iran. And Canada has been the lead in terms of imposing those limitations. If you want to know what kind of limitations Canada has imposed on the government of Iran and some elements of the government of Iran, you can take a look at this article. We have more information about that. Generally speaking, it won't affect all Iranians when they are traveling to Canada or immigrating to Canada. In fact, it shouldn't affect 99.9% of Iranians, but those people who in the eyes of Canada are responsible for those atrocities will be prevented from coming to Canada. Their assets, if they have assets in Canada, could be frozen by the Canadian government, and this could even affect their accompanying family members. And the other issue is about the uh, some of the elements of applying for medical examination. So IRCC is going to exempt some applicants in Canada from IME requirements until October 6, 2024. And IME stands for Immigration Medical Examination. So IRCC has implemented a temporary public policy that exempts some applicants who are already in Canada from submitting an immigration medical examination, IME. The announcement was made on October 12, 2022, to help eligible foreign nationals quickly obtain temporary or permanent resident. In a previous announcement, the Minister of Immigration said that simplifying this process will impact approximately 180,000 clients. It will also help clients by saving time and money on the medical examination process and reducing wait time on their applications. So you may read this, but I just briefly explain who will be most likely affected. The temporary public policy, which will remain in effect until October 6, 2024, applies to foreign nationals who have a new or pending application for permanent temporary resident or a permanent resident visa made from within Canada. So remember that the person must be in Canada, have completed an immigration medical exam within the last 5 years, and posed no risk to public health safety or reported to public health authorities for monitoring as required. Also, foreign nationals who are accompanying a family member may be eligible under this policy. So if you want to know more about medical inadmissibility to Canada, why Canada runs a medical examination, it's a good idea if you take a look at this article, because we have also given links to some of my articles about medical inadmissibility in Canada. You have to take medical inadmissibility seriously, even in the process of permanent residence to Canada. If one of the family members is inadmissible to Canada on grounds of medical reasons, all family members become inadmissible on grounds of medical inadmissibility. And grounds could include having a disease that could threaten the health of Canadians. Right now, the diseases on the list are an untreated syphilis, or a positive case of TB or pulmonary tuberculosis. But a minister can add to this list. On top of that, if the safety of Canadians, because of the behavior of the person, will be affected, then that person could be also inadmissible on grounds of medical inadmissibility. This usually targets some serious mental health issues that make a person violent towards others. So it's not about depression or anxiety, it's about violence, it's about pedophilia, it's about those kinds of decisions that could affect the safety of other people. And on top of that, we are dealing with excessive demand. So if the medical condition of a person uh, puts a significant strain on the Canadian healthcare system by increasing the rate of morbidity or mortality of Canadians, by increasing the wait times for receiving procedures, or by imposing significant costs on the universal healthcare system in Canada, then that person could be inadmissible to Canada. I have some articles that details these kinds of inadmissibilities. You can also book a consultation session with me if you believe that this is something that could prevent you from immigrating or traveling or working or studying in Canada. I don't know if I shared this last time with you or not, but Canada ran another round of, and please post your questions, I will answer them for sure. So Canada ran another round of express entry draw. They invited a record number of 4,250 people. I say a record number based on what was happening in 2022. So the first round of invitation in 2022, in fact, occurred on June 6, 2022, and they only invited 1,500 people. And then they gradually increased the number of invitations, and the number of invitation the last time was a record. They invited 4,250. We have not reached the numbers before COVID, which they usually invited 5,000 people. Regardless, by inviting 4,250 people, the CRS score dropped from 504 in the past round to 500. We're still at 500 level, but if they continue invitations and also increase the number of invitations, we're hoping to see by the end of this year, I'm hoping to see the scores being dropped to 495, anywhere between 490 to 495. That's what I'm hoping to see. What will really happen, we have to wait and see. And again, if the invitations continue, it is likely that we will again see even scores as low as 460 something to be selected. But again, it depends on the policies of the government. If you are not familiar with express entry system, again, I will post the link to this article later beneath my YouTube video, but you can take a look at these numbers. And also there are some links about the actual express entry system, what programs are covered by express entry system, and how the government will look at them. Okay, so it's a good idea if you know the basics about express entry system before even thinking about it. I have actually an article uh, about the express entry process. If I just locate it, there we go. So I have actually a flow chart here that it explains express entry in more details, how you can enter the process, how you can exit the process, how you could be rejected from the process, and I have other videos that explain this. You can watch those videos as well. Actually, I have this express entry process video that explains the process. I don't want to repeat myself. You can watch it on YouTube, or if you visit settler.ca and look for express entry process, I will you can watch the video on settler.ca as well. Okay, before I move forward, let me take a look at the some of the questions that I see here. So the first one is from John Justin. Hi, sir. If a RISIA wants to register as an RCIC, will it need to take the EP exam again? So that's a question for the college. It's not for me. Honestly, I don't know because when I joined this Canadian Society of Immigration Consultant. Then I was grandparented to ICCRC, and then of course grandparented to CICC. So I'm not sure the process for RISIAs to move on. As you know, RISIAs, and for those of you who don't know, RISIAs are employees of educational facilities like universities and colleges that help international students to apply for their study permit, and they have a special license for that. Instead of being an RCIC, which I am, they become a RISIA. How they a RISIA could become an RCIC, I would say it's in your best interest if you get in touch with the college and ask them what would be the process, because I may give you the wrong answers. Okay, the next question is from Wilson Tipo. Do you think Canada will regularize undocumented workers and a failed refugee healthcare workers? So there is a possibility. We are looking at, roughly speaking, 500,000 undocumented workers in Canada, and that's a very large number. And actually, at the time, the very beginning of pandemic, one of the requests that we had from the government of Canada is to give status at least to some of those undocumented people in Canada. And what actually happened was that they piloted that, and they offer permanent residency to only 500 construction workers in Toronto. So they said that if you're a construction worker in Toronto with some requirements, we will make you a permanent resident of Canada if you have been working in Toronto under the construction system for a while. So that's what they did, and they piloted that. And now their rumor says, and actually I have seen this on some major news outlets, that the government is now entertaining the idea, and they will eventually will offer a plan to make some of the unauthorized workers here in Canada to become permanent residents. And that could be actually a good solution to legalize those people, allow them to pay their taxes, become more effective in our country, etc., etc. But how the government will implement those measures and to what extent they will go, what would be the requirements, that's something that is not known to me. So we have to wait and see how it will develop. Do they have a plan? Yes, they do. When and how they will present that plan, we still don't know it. So John Justin says, is the Queen's University will be the only school for RCIC permanently, or other schools will add in the future? Thanks for the answer. So right now, as you know, if you want to become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, you need to go through special training. If you are a francophone, that training is being offered by University of Montreal. If you are an anglophone or you want to take this the training in in the English language, then you need to go to Queen's University. For those of you who know that, I have taught at Queen's University as well. Will they expand this to other schools? I don't see it in the near future, but this is what I'm hoping, because I think in reality, just limiting the education to only one school is not good enough. We need to have multiple great schools like Queen's. Queen's is an amazing university, but we need multiple schools as good as Queens, or maybe even better than Queens, to offer the training. Right now, I don't see it in the plans by CICC. Will that happen in the future? I keep my fingers crossed that this will happen in the future. So we have a question actually from LinkedIn from Amit Kumar. Amit Kumar says, "Hello, what about RNIP program going on? Is there any draw?" Not that I'm familiar with. I don't know if they have any specific plans. Actually, we had a posting about RNIP a few weeks back, and let me double check to see what was the latest development. Okay, so yeah, this is what happened. So I can share this screen with you. And I will post the link here. Actually, I will post the link here because you are on LinkedIn. You may not see it. Let's see if it will post it to LinkedIn as well. Oh, unfortunately, the link is not posted to LinkedIn. It's just posted to Facebook and YouTube. But if you go on settler.ca, our website, and search for RNIP, you will see this. This is the first posting. And these are the areas that are covered by this program. So if you have a job offer from a valid employer from any of these areas, then you could apply for permanent residence. And these are the changes that they have. So for example, they expanded your geographic boundaries of 7 of those areas. So more employers are now qualified. They made it easier to fill labor market needs in the healthcare. And then also they allowed communities to participate for a longer period until August of 2024. So they extended the pilot program. And they also helping community partners provide greater support to candidates and employers, reducing the amount of settlement funds participants are required to have, and strengthening program integrity. So these are the changes being made to the RNIP, but what will actually happening in there? That's as far as I know. Okay. Yeah, that's very unfortunate, Amit Kapar. I know that we see backlogs pretty much everywhere, and I don't know what to say. Your best bet is just to get in touch with IRCC and see somehow you can expedite the process, or ask your representative to see if they can help you with expediting the process. But to be honest with you, I don't think that's gonna happen. It's very unlikely. Okay, so the next question is from Janelle George. Please tell about the consequences of refugee migration. I'm a differently abled person with graduation in BCA. Is there any problem from different abled person for migration? So generally speaking, the refugee program is not about your physical or mental health abilities. It's about persecution. So as a general rule, and I'm just defining it very broadly. We're talking about somebody who is either a convention refugee or somebody who is in need of protection. So, convention refugees are usually people who are displaced from their home country or their country of habitual residence because of what is happening there. So, like war, like genocide, like being a member of a social group, like being a woman, something like what is happening right now in Iran against women, etc., etc. So that could be one reason. The other reason is that you are, for some reason, you need protection because, for example, something very negative and dangerous is happening against you, and that dangerous thing is happening either by the government of that country, or the government fails to protect you from that danger, and because of that you could be a person that is falling under the definition of somebody who needs protection. Again, I'm loosely defining these things. There's a lot more to that. These are defined under section 96 and 97 of the Immigration Act of Canada. And then there are two ways that you can file for refugee. As I mentioned, if you're displaced from your own country, go to a third country and then ask for protection from UNHCR, and then eventually they can resettle you to Canada. Or you may be here in Canada and file for refugee status. They will review your claim, and if they agree with you, they give you protection. So these are the very basics of applying for refugee. In terms of the consequences, if they approve you, so if you're resettled, that's a different story, because a resettlement, if they say no to you, it means that you're usually stuck in that third country, or you have to go back to your own country. But if they approve you, you will move to Canada as a permanent resident. If you are inside Canada and they approve you, you receive protection, and then after protection, you can apply for permanent residence. If they refuse your application, it becomes very complicated. Sometimes you can appeal the decision. Sometimes you can file for pre-removal risk assessment. Sometimes you can apply for immigration under humanitarian and compassionate considerations. If none of those apply to you, then you will receive a removal order and you will be removed from Canada. Again, I try to quickly answer this question and simplifying it. There's a lot more to that, because each of those things that I mentioned, they can take several months, several years, and also include many legalities, etc. I have a bunch of articles, Janelle, about these things: refugee application, consequences of that, PRA application, HNC application, etc. If you also check out settler.ca, you will see those articles. And for some of them, I even have videos. Okay, so there's another question. Is the public policy allowing TFW low skilled worker to apply for LMI still in effect? So LMIA, it's basically, what does it do? It divides employees into two major groups. Of course, we have different types of LMIA, like global talent stream, etc. I don't want to go into the details of those, but the mainstream of LMIA is divided into two, actually, categories. One category is high wage, and the other category is low wage. And with the high wage, if you receive certain salary, then you will be considered a high wage applicant, and then you can apply through that stream. If you receive below that salary, which we call it the median wage, then this means that you are considered low wage. And then there are some complexities with applications for low wage, but it's a possibility. Okay. Now, by when you're referring to lowest skilled worker, Canada was running a pilot program for lowest skilled worker, which they stopped it. So we don't have the low skilled worker stream anymore. Having said that, a low skilled worker is very likely a person who falls under the low wage, the current low wage program, which has been in effect since August 28th of 2017. So since 2017, we have this new structure of high wage, low wage applications. I have actually some articles regarding this, and if you bear with me, I have actually two articles about comparing. low wage and high wage programs. So this is the table that I was talking about. So for example, and since April 30th, 2022, the new table is this one. So if you are a person who applies for a work in, say, the province of Nova Scotia, then if your salary that you are receiving is $22 or more per hour, then you are considered a high wage applicant. If it is less than $22, then you are considered a low wage applicant. Keep that in mind. This is not just the only requirement. There are so many other things that need to happen. For example, the salary that you are being paid, it needs to meet the prevailing wage as well, etc., etc. I have some tables that compares high wage and low wage programs, for example, in terms of their salary, the processing fee, business legitimacy documents. Is there a cap? Which for low wage, there is a cap, and then transition plan. And also the recruitment efforts, what are the differences? And in terms of other criteria like transportation, housing, healthcare, employment contract, etc., what steps the employer needs to take to hire the person. So if I don't forget, I will post the link below this video about high wage, low wage program. But for those of you who are on Facebook and on YouTube, you can also look at the link here. So I hope I answered your question, John. Yes, Janelle, no problem. Okay, now we have another 20 minutes left. So what I'm going to talk to you about is misrepresentation, because we have some forms on our website, and we probably receive I don't know how many, but we receive several emails every day from different people. They are asking questions. Now, interestingly enough, some of those questions are about questions that they need to be asked from the immigration authorities. But unfortunately, because IRCC is not responsive to those questions, they end up asking those questions from us, which we unfortunately we have to ask them to. Thank you very much, John. Oh, there's another question, Wilson. I will answer that question as well. I want to tell you that we are a private entity. We are not the government of Canada. We are a for-profit organization. So we on only source of income is our clients. So please understand those. But anyways, if you contact us and you need the services of the government, we will direct you to those services. If we can assist you, then we will send you a proposal that could be either asking you to book a consultation session with me or filling out our assessment forms, etc. One of the main questions that people ask us, and believe me, I receive these questions probably on a daily basis, is about misrepresentation. But hold on your thoughts. Before I talk about misrepresentation, let me answer Wilson's question. So Wilson says, what is the government doing to stop deportation, since they are talking about status regularization of undocumented workers who are contributing to the Canadian communities? So we currently, in terms of deportations, we currently have some measures by CBSA, and those measures currently, if I'm not mistaken, affecting 7 countries. So if you are from any of those countries, despite being subject to a removal order from Canada, they won't remove you from Canada. CBSA is constantly reviewing um, that list, and in fact, we are advocating to CBSA, and we have actually pled to the Minister of Public Safety to add Iran to that list. If you believe that your country is a country that is dangerous in nature, then you can also let us know, or we will try to communicate with the authorities or ask other organizations like Legal Aid to be your voice and talk to CBSA and to the government to prevent removal orders to your country. But will they generalize that to unauthorized workers? That's not something that they have announced. uh, that could be part of their plan for the transition of unauthorized workers or undocumented workers to eventually become permanent residents in Canada. We have to wait and see. Unfortunately, there is no announcement at this stage. The only solid thing that we have is the policy by CBSA in terms of not removing certain nationalities, but it doesn't expand to, unfortunately, all nationalities. And as I mentioned, depending on the situations, we try to advocate and convince them. So one of the things that we do as an organization, as Parsai Immigration Services, we try to advocate on behalf of refugees and immigrants and try to make the situation better for them. Just recently, just last week, I sent multiple emails to the Minister of Immigration, to the Minister of Public Safety, to Immigration Refugee Board of Canada, and our journalist is in touch with those entities as well. And one of the reasons that we are constantly are in touch with them is to learn about what's going on in the world of immigration and how we can potentially help people like undocumented workers in Canada. So I keep my fingers crossed that in 2023, we'll see some positive movements by the government of Canada, because what we see from Minister Sean Fraser and from the department, IRCC, and even from CBSA, is that they have this tendency to be more lenient towards those unauthorized people who are inside Canada. How this will develop and how it will unfold, I don't know yet. I keep my fingers crossed that many good things happen. Okay. So let's go back to the concept of, and by the way, don't give yourself high hopes though, as we can only focus on those things when we have solid decisions by the government. If those solid decisions are not in place, then the only thing that remains for us is just on one-on-one basis we try to resolve issues for our clients. So whether I go to an immigration appeal hearing or a refugee protection division hearing, or I'm dealing with a decision that will affect a person who is inside Canada, or HNC applications, this is my role to be an advocate for my client, and I do my best to be that person. In terms of a general decision, only policies can resolve those. Okay, now the last topic for today would be the topic of misrepresentation. Misrepresentation sometimes happens intentionally because you deliberately decide to falsify a document, submit fraudulent documents, hide information from the immigration authorities, or include documentation that affect the way that the officer decides a case. Thank you, Wilson. But that could result into, if you're outside Canada, into inadmissibility to Canada for 5 years. And it's not just 5 years of inadmissibility. Even after 5 years, when you submit applications, they will scrutinize your application because of the history that you had. So this is very bad. If you are inside Canada, you could even face criminal charges. In fact, for misrepresentation, you could face up to 5 years in prison and up to $100,000 in fines. So this is a serious crime from the point of view of the immigration authorities. But sometimes misrepresentation happens without your knowledge, or you do not quite know what is happening. So it's because you didn't know how important it is to the immigration authorities when you're answering a question or you're presenting a document. You don't know the consequences of falsifying information or hiding information from the authorities. Sometimes you receive bad advice, or sometimes, even without your knowledge, a representative will submit false documents, forged documents on your behalf. If you're encountering those situations, then it is common for immigration authorities to send you a PFL, or a procedure of fairness letter. And that procedure of fairness letter will give you some time to submit documents to the authorities in support of what is happening, and then try to resolve that issue. Now, resolving a misrepresentation case is absolutely not easy. In fact, in most cases, the officers will not back off. Having said that, we can mitigate the situation in some cases. So, for example, instead of receiving a misrepresentation, they just refuse the application without imposing a 5-year ban. Or sometimes they may allow you to withdraw the application, or sometimes they may agree to alternative solutions such as a temporary resident permit or application under humanitarian and compassionate considerations. Or in case of refusal of spousal applications, even if it's because of misrepresentation, we still have the opportunity to appeal the decision of the officer. So, depending on the case, we look into that and we try to sort matters and try to fix it. So, if you, for any reason, have decided to misrepresent, or you suspect that your representative has misrepresented, don't wait for the problem to come. First of all, if you can, if you still have not submitted your application, please stay away from misrepresentation. But if your application has already been submitted, then or you have received a procedural fairness letter, please get in touch with me, and we'll look into that and see how we can help you. My goal is to clear the matter between you and the immigration authorities. In many cases, when we are facing misrepresentation, it doesn't mean that the person is an evil person or they want to do something weird. It's just that they don't know, or they don't know the consequences, or they are being the recipient of bad advice. So please sort it out before it's too late. Get in touch with me, and you can book a consultation session with me. We go through the process. My consultation sessions are not free, but if we come to the conclusion that you want to hire me, we will deduct 100% of the consultation fee from the retainer agreement. Okay, so we have two more questions. So may I ask the reason why Canadian PR cannot enter Canada without visa, while a US green card holder can enter Canada without a visa? So a PR definitely can enter Canada without a visa. I assuming you're talking about entering the United States, because a permanent resident of Canada under Section 27 of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act has the right to enter Canada. And this means that as long as you are a permanent resident, you meet the residency obligations, you are not subject to a removal order, or you have not done something to become inadmissible to Canada, you can definitely enter Canada. You have the right to enter Canada. But if you're talking about a permanent resident of Canada entering the United States, well, that's the agreement between the United States and Canada. So the Canada has agreed to allow green card holders from the United States to freely travel to Canada. In fact, in the past, they asked them to do ETA, electronic travel authorization, but they even dropped that ETA requirement for green card holders. But unfortunately, the United States didn't reciprocate. So this means that if you are a permanent resident of Canada, depending on your nationality, you may still need to apply for a visa to the United States. That's more of a political immigration decision between the policymakers of the United States and Canada. And of course, you can cast your voice by sending an email to the immigration authorities of the United States, to the immigration authorities of Canada, and encourage them to remove this barrier. I don't see the appetite from the US side, but that's something that we can do, and hopefully we'll see some positive outcome for Canadian permanent residents. So the next one is that please continue to speak on our behalf. Some of work 16 to 20 hours a day for 5 years now, and we're still working at the same time. We're depressed every day. I know that, and believe me, in the beginning of the pandemic, I communicated with the minister. I explained what's going on, and I asked them to please, this is the right time to allow undocumented workers, unauthorized workers to become permanent residents in Canada. There is an organization, I believe they are located in Vancouver area, that they are advocating on behalf of unauthorized workers. And I encourage you to also Google to see what resources are on your side and try to ask those resources to offer you support. I understand what you are going through, and I hope the government changes the way that they treat unauthorized workers. They have plans. I know that they do. It's just that we don't know the details, and I keep my fingers crossed that they soon present those plans. The other problem that they're preventing them from quickly presenting those plans is the backlogs. Right now, we are dealing with 2.6 million people in different backlogs of the immigration system or citizenship system. And if they add strain to that by introducing measures for unauthorized workers, then that make people go crazy. Having said that, I hope that they come up with something. And if there's something that happens that I think I can be an advocate, believe me, I will do that. Now, thanks to my progress as almost 12 years of work experience, a flourishing business, and also being a teacher at Ashton College, Queen's University, an author. All of those have helped me to be a voice for people, and I will continue to be that voice. So is the online PR card renewal is now on, Sarah? Thank you too much for answering. Yes, the online PR card system is working. At least for us, it's working. I don't know whether for the public it's working or not, but I guess it does. And you can apply online. Yes, unless yesterday something happened and I'm not aware of it. Okay, so we're almost there. Thank you very much for watching this video. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I have an unrestricted license. It means that I'm an RCIC-IRB. I can represent clients to the Immigration Refugee Board of Canada in their refugee hearings, in their immigration appeal hearings, in their removal order hearings, etc. And I also teach at Ashton College some advanced certificate programs for other RCICs. And I offer mentorship sessions for regulated Canadian immigration consultants. I have represented clients from 55 different countries in this world. And I hope to continue working like that at your service. I have one more question. Before I answer that question, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, enable notifications, share these videos with other people. I'll do my best to publish recorded videos as well on top of live sessions discussing different aspects of immigration to Canada. So the last question is from YouTube. Hi, sir. Actually, two last questions. I'm getting a work permit from my current organization to Montreal. Can I apply for a non-provincial PR? So generally speaking, Quebec is a different beast. When you are applying for anything with the province of Quebec, it is outside of my jurisdiction. I do not practice Quebec. I don't have the license for Quebec. So I just answer your questions with some caution. And so generally speaking, if you want to work in Quebec, with the exception of IMP International Mobility Program, you need to go through a process that by somebody who is also licensed for Quebec. Eventually, if you secure the work permit in Quebec, does this mean it will prevent you from immigrating to other provinces? No, it doesn't. Generally speaking, it doesn't. And you can immigrate to other provinces as well. But you have to be very careful because, as I mentioned, I'm not a licensed Quebec practitioner. I highly recommend that you also discuss your questions, if you have a work permit or study permit in Quebec, with somebody who is a licensed practitioner in the province of Quebec. Okay, thank you very much for watching this video. As I mentioned, please follow us, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and I'll come back. I have live sessions every Wednesday at 12 p.m. ET, or Eastern time. I don't say Eastern Standard Time because it's a Toronto time. And Ontario has decided to remain on the summertime all time. So we won't have daylight saving anymore. I mean, we are on a permanent daylight saving. So 12 p.m. Toronto time, whatever time is your time, I will be live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter answering your questions and talking about the latest developments in Canada. See you next week. And of course, watch our videos as we post them on different channels.